Okay, now we can get started. Good afternoon, baseball fans. Big Al here on this Monday, August 17th, 2026, and welcome into our weekly check of the Major League Baseball standings and the playoff races through August 16th. Alright, so as we do every week, we look at every team, tell you how they did the previous week and who they play the coming week. I'll give you their post All-Star record, and ESPN also added playoff probabilities for every single team. So we will be going through all of that as we go along here. Alright, let's waste no time and jump right into the Major League Baseball standings and the playoff races through August 16th. And we'll start as always in the American League East, led by the Tampa Bay Rays, with a record of 74-49. 41-21 at home, 33-28 on the road. They scored 559 runs and gave up 507 for a run differential of plus 52. They've lost 3 straight games and they are 7-3 over their last 10. And as of August 16th, they have more than a 99.9% possibility of making the playoffs. It was a hot and cold week for the Rays. They started off hot, sweeping the A's in Sacramento 3-0, scoring 30 runs and allowing 14. But then coming home again and losing the first 3 of a 4-game wraparound series with the Orioles. To this point, they have been outscored 20-10 with 1 game left. So for the week, they finished 3-3 with 40 runs scored and 34 runs allowed. Alright, this week, this starts off with the finale of that 4-game series with the Baltimore Orioles at Tropicana Field today. That's Monday as I'm recording this. And then they host the Toronto Blue Jays for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, before playing the Orioles again in Baltimore Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tampa Bay has a 19-11 record after the All-Star break. In second place, you have the New York Yankees at 69-55. They are 5.5 games behind the Rays. 31-27 at home, 38-28 on the road. 551 runs scored and 466 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 85. They won their last game and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Through Sunday, New York has a 99.4% chance of making the playoffs. Last week, they went 2-1 at home against the Seattle Mariners, scoring 14 runs and giving up 7. And then they went 1-2 at the Rogers Center against the Toronto Blue Jays, being outscored in that series 10-6. So the Bronx Bombers finished with a 3-3 week with 20 runs scored and 17 runs allowed. Alright. Next up, they'll play the Baltimore Orioles down at Camden Yards for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then they'll host the Toronto Blue Jays at Yankee Stadium for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Yankees have a 15-13 record after the All-Star break. The Boston Red Sox are in third place. They have a record of 66-58. They are 8.5 games behind Tampa Bay in the East. 29-31 at home, 37-27 on the road. 549 runs scored and 468 runs allowed. That gives them a run differential of plus 81. They lost their last game and they kind of cooled off a bit, going 3-7 over their last 10. They presently have a 92.2% chance of making the playoffs. And it was a rough week for the Red Sox. They lose 3 out of 4 in Toronto, despite outscoring the Blue Jays 15-13. Then they went to PNC Park and lost 2 of 3 to the Pirates, being outscored in that series 16-11. For the week, they finished 2-5 with 26 runs scored and 29 runs allowed. And they'll be hosting two NL West teams this coming week, as they'll host the Arizona Diamondbacks for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, followed by 3 with the San Francisco Giants, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Red Sox are 20-10 after the All-Star break. Then you got the Baltimore Orioles in 4th place with a record of 61-63, currently 13.5 games behind the Rays. 32-30 at home, 29-33 on the road. 563 runs scored and 589 runs allowed for a run differential of -26. They've won 3 straight and they are 5-5 in their last 10. They currently have a 22.9% chance of making the playoffs. Last week, the Orioles lost the series at Minnesota 2-1. They were outscored 18-15. Then they went into Tropicana Field and swept 3 from the Tampa Bay Rays. 20-10 is the score across those 3 games, and they have 1 more game left in that series. So overall for the week, Baltimore finished 4-2 with 35 runs scored and 28 runs allowed. This week, they wrap up their 4-game wraparound series in Tampa on Monday, and then they return home to host the New York Yankees for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then they'll host the Tampa Bay Rays for 3 more, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Baltimore is 15-12 after the All-Star break. That's Reg. What's up? Sitting in last in the AL East are the Toronto Blue Jays at 61-65, but they have played a lot better recently. They are 14.5 games behind Tampa Bay. 33-33 at home, 28-32 on the road. 492 runs scored and 549 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -57. They lost their last game, but they are 7-3 over their last 10. They currently have a 17.2% chance of making the playoffs. And Toronto had a real good week hosting 2 division rivals at the Rogers Center. They started the week going 3-1 against the Boston Red Sox, although they were outscored 15-13. Then they went 2-1 against the New York Yankees, outscoring the Bronx Bombers 10-6. So the Blue Jays closed the week 5-2 with 23 runs scored and 21 runs allowed. And they'll be road tripping within the AL East this week. They're headed off to St. Petersburg for 3 with the Tampa Bay Rays, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then they meet the Yankees again, this time in the Bronx, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Toronto is 16-14 at the All-Star break. I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, but right now I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona. On to the American League Central, which is led by the Chicago White Sox with a record of 65-58. 37-24 at home, 28-34 on the road. 594 runs scored and 547 runs allowed gives them a run differential of +47. They won 3 straight games, and they are 6-4 over their last 10. Through Sunday, the White Sox have a 72.8% chance of making the playoffs. Last week, they went 1-2 at home against the Cincinnati Reds, outscoring them 17-14, and then went into Detroit and swept the Tigers 3-0, with 20 runs scored and 13 runs allowed. For the week, the Southsiders finished 4-2 with 37 runs scored and 27 runs allowed. The White Sox will have 7 games this week. They're going to take the trek cross town to play the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they return home to play a makeup game with the Atlanta Braves on Thursday. before welcoming in the New York Mets for the weekend for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The White Sox are 15-13 after the All-Star break. The Detroit Tigers sit second in the Central with a record of 60-64. They are 5.5 games behind Chicago. 32-31 at home, 28-33 on the road. 565 runs scored and 482 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 83. They lost 3 straight and they are 5-5 over their last 10. As of Sunday, the Tigers have an 18.9% chance of making the playoffs. The week started out good for Detroit as they went 2-1 at home against the division rival Cleveland Guardians, outscoring them 13-10, but then they got swept at home by the Chicago White Sox 3-0 and being outscored 20-13. End result is a 2-4 record for Detroit with 26 runs scored and 30 runs allowed. They'll be on the road all week, beginning with 3 against the Pirates in Pittsburgh Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then it's off to Kansas City for 3 with the Royals Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Tigers presently have a 16-12 record after the All-Star break. Tied for third place are the Minnesota Twins and Cleveland Guardians, both at 60-65, and both 6 games behind the White Sox for first in the Central. The Twins are 32-31 at home and 28-34 on the road, while the Guardians are 29-33 at home and 31-32 on the road. Minnesota scored 578 runs and allowed 626, giving them a run differential of minus 48. Cleveland, meanwhile, scored 494 runs and allowed 526, which gives them a run differential of minus 32. The Twins lost 3 in a row, and they are 4-6 over their last 10 games, and they currently have a 20.3% chance of making the playoffs. The Guardians, meanwhile, lost their last game, and they are 3-7 over their last 10, and they have a 25.7% chance of making the playoffs. Last week, the Twins went 2-1 at home against the Baltimore Orioles, outscoring them 18-15. And then they got swept by the Philadelphia Phillies. 2 of the games being played at Target Field. The one game on Thursday was played at the Field of Dreams Park in Iowa. And Minnesota was outscored in that series 23-7. The Twins closed the week 2-4 with 25 runs scored and 38 runs allowed. And they have a tough week in front of them as they'll host the Atlanta Braves for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they head west for a 3-game set with the San Diego Padres Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Twins are 12-16 after the All-Star break. Meanwhile, the Guardians went 1-2 at Detroit, being outscored 13-10. And then they came home and lost the series to the San Diego Padres 2-1, being outscored 13-11. Cleveland also finishes the week 2-4 with 21 runs scored and 26 runs allowed. This week they'll host the San Francisco Giants for 3 games for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then they go to Denver to play the Rockies for 3 games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Guardians are 9-19 after the All-Star break. As of now, it is the 2nd worst record in the American League post-All-Star break. Sitting in last are the Kansas City Royals at 51-74, 15 games behind Chicago. 29-30 at home, 22-44 on the road. 513 runs scored and 624 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 111. They won their last game and they are 3-7 over their last 10. They have less than a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs. Alright, last week they were in Southern California, particularly in Los Angeles for the most part. They were swept by the Dodgers, where they were outscored 15-11. Then they went down the freeway to Anaheim and won the series against the Angels 2-1, scoring 10 runs and allowing just 7. They finished the week 2-4 with 21 runs scored and 22 runs allowed. And they're playing every day this week, beginning with a 4-game set with the Sacramento A's, Monday through Thursday. And then they host the Tigers for 3, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. KC is 13-15 after the All-Star break. That brings us to the American League West, which is led by the Houston Astros at 63-62. 31-31 at home, 32-31 on the road. 576 runs scored and 606 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -30. They've lost 2 straight games and they are 4-6 in their last 10. They have a 62.8% chance of reaching the playoffs. Alright. The Astros started the week in San Francisco, where they beat the Giants 2-1 with 9 runs scored and 8 runs allowed. They returned home and won the series against the Seattle Mariners 2-1, despite being outscored 20-17. So that's a 3-3 week for Houston. 26 runs scored and 28 runs allowed. And they will be hosting division rivals this week at Daikin Park, starting off with 3 against the LA Angels Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by the Sacramento A's coming to Houston for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Astros are 16-11 post All-Star break. In second, you have the Texas Rangers at 61-64. 32-27 at home, 29-37 on the road. 507 runs scored, 554 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -47. They lost their last game and they are 4-6 over their last 10. Texas currently has a 32.2% chance to make the playoffs. And this was a rough week for the Rangers, losing the series at Anaheim against the Angels 3-1 and being outscored 16-8. Then they went to Sacramento and lost 2 of 3 to the A's, being outscored in that series 16-10. That's a 2-5 record for the Rangers, with 18 runs scored and 32 runs allowed. This week they'll host the Washington Nationals for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, before welcoming the Angels to Arlington over the weekend for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Texas is 11-17 after the All-Star break. In third place, you have the Seattle Mariners with a record of 59-66. They are 4 games behind the Stros. 33-29 at home, 26-37 on the road. 489 runs scored and 512 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -23. They've won 2 straight games and they are 3-7 over their last 10. Seattle currently has a 35.6% chance of making the playoffs. Last week, the Mariners lost the series to the New York Yankees 2-1, and they were outscored in that series 14-7. Then they go into Houston and take 2 of 3 from the Astros, and scored 20 runs while allowing 17. They finished the week 3-3 with 27 runs scored and 31 runs allowed. And they got a tough week ahead of them as well. They play the Milwaukee Brewers at American Family Field for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then they return home to T-Mobile Park for 3 with the Chicago Cubs, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Mariners are 11-16 post All-Star break. The A's come in 4th with a record of 49-75. They are 13.5 games behind the Astros. 23-40 at home, 26 and 35 on the road. 540 runs scored and 714 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 174. They won their last game and they are 4-6 over their last 10. They have less than a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs, which means they are a long shot. The week started out poorly for the A's as they were swept at home by the Tampa Bay Rays, 3-0, and they were outscored 30-14. And then the Texas Rangers came into town and the A's won 2 of 3 in that series, outscoring the Rangers 16-10. That's a 2-4 week for the A's with 30 runs scored and 40 runs allowed. This week they have a 4-game set against the Kansas City Royals at Kauffman Stadium Monday through Thursday, followed by a 3-game series in Houston with the first place Astros Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The A's are 8-20 after the All-Star break. And then in last place in the West are the Los Angeles Angels at 49-76, 14 games behind the Astros in the West. 29-36 at home, 20-40 on the road. 507 runs scored and 593 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 86. They lost their last game and they are 5-5 in their last 10. They also have less than a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs. But they had a good week. They went 3-1 at home against the Texas Rangers, outscoring them 16-8. And then they hosted the Kansas City Royals, where they would win or lose the series, rather, 2-1, and they were outscored 10-7. But still, that's a 4-3 record for the Angels last week with 23 runs scored and 18 runs allowed. And they'll be doing the Texas two-step this week as they play the Astros in Houston for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, followed by the Rangers up in Arlington for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. LA is 11-17 after the All-Star break. Alright, now let's jump over to the National League East. And we'll start off with the Atlanta Braves with a record of 74-50. 42-23 at home, 32-27 on the road. 599 runs scored and 482 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 117. They won their last game and they are 5-5 over their last 10. The Braves have a 99.5% chance of making the playoffs. Alright, last week they played all 6 games at Truist Park, taking 2 of 3 from the New York Mets and outscoring them 15-11, and then dropping the series to the Arizona Diamondbacks 2-1 and being outscored 15-8. End result is a 3-3 record for the first place Braves with 23 runs scored and 26 runs allowed. Alright, they'll be playing 7 games in 3 cities this week, beginning with a 3-game set in Minneapolis against the Twins Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they head to Chicago for a makeup game with the White Sox on Thursday. And then they go to Milwaukee for 3 games with the Brewers Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That should be a fun series to watch. The Braves are 19-10 after the All-Star break. In second place, you have the Philadelphia Phillies at 67-58, 7.5 games behind the Braves. 32-30 at home, 35-28 on the road. 558 runs scored and 549 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 9. They won 3 straight games and they are 6-4 over their last 10. And they have a 78.4% chance of making the playoffs. Alright, they started the week in St. Louis, going 1-2 against the Cardinals and being outscored 14-7. Then they swept a 3-game set with the Minnesota Twins, with 2 being played in Minneapolis and 1 game being played at the Field of Dreams field in Iowa. Philly would outscore Minnesota in the series 23-7. So Philadelphia closes the week 4-2 with 30 runs scored and 21 runs allowed. Alright, this week they'll host the Miami Marlins for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then you got the return series with the St. Louis Cardinals, this time at Citizens Bank Park for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Phillies are 13-15 after the All-Star break. In third place are the aforementioned Miami Marlins with a record of 64-61. They are 10.5 games behind Atlanta. 38-25 at home, 26-36 on the road. 550 runs scored and 530 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 20. They've won 2 straight and they are 6-4 in their last 10. The Marlins have a 9.8% chance of making the playoffs. Last week, the Marlins won both of their series, going 2-1 at home against the Pittsburgh Pirates, although they were outscored 15-11 in that series. Then they went to Cincinnati and went 2-1 against the Reds, where they would outscore them 15-6. That's a 4-2 record for Miami, with 26 runs scored and 21 runs allowed. This week, they'll play the Philadelphia Phillies at Citizens Bank Park for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then it's back home to Lone Depot Park for 3 with the Washington Nationals, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Miami is 12-16 after the All-Star break. In fourth place, you have the Washington Nationals at 60-66. 15 games behind Atlanta. 27-36 at home, 33-30 on the road. They scored a major league high 670 runs while giving up 652. That gives them a run differential of plus 18. They've lost 3 straight games and they are 4-6 over their last 10. They have a 0.3% chance of making the playoffs. Last week, the Nationals went 1-2 at home against the Chicago Cubs, being outscored 20-19. And then they went to Citi Field and got swept by the New York Mets 3-0 and being outscored in that series 13-8. That's a 1-5 record for Washington with 27 runs scored and 33 runs allowed. And they'll be on the road outside the nation's capital this week. They have 3 at Arlington with the Texas Rangers Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by 3 in Miami against the division rival Marlins Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Nats are 12-17 after the All-Star break. Sitting last in the East are the New York Mets with a record of 56-69, 18.5 games behind the Braves, 28-34 at home, 28-35 on the road, 523 runs scored, and 565 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 42. They won 3 straight games and they are 7-3 over their last 10. They presently have a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs. Alright, the Mets started the week in Atlanta, losing 2 of 3 to the Braves and being outscored 15-11. Then they came home and swept the Washington Nationals 3-0, 13 runs scored, 8 runs allowed. New York closes the week 4-2 with 24 runs scored and 23 runs allowed. This week they host the San Diego Padres for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they're off to the south side of Chicago for 3 with the White Sox, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Mets are 16-12 after the All-Star break. Moving on to the National League Central. The Milwaukee Brewers still have the best record in Major League Baseball through August 16th at 77-48. 41-22 at home, 36-26 on the road. 608 runs scored and 472 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 136, which right now would tie for the best run differential in baseball. They've won 2 straight games and they are 5-5 over their last 10. They have better than a 99.9% chance of making the playoffs. And the week couldn't have started out more poorly for the Brewers as they were swept by the Padres in San Diego, being outscored 18-7. Then they went to LA and won 3 out of 4 against the Dodgers, outscoring Los Angeles 16-10. So the Brewers did end with a losing record of 3-4, with 23 runs scored and 28 runs allowed. They're back home in the friendly confines of American Family Field, where they'll play 3 against the Seattle Mariners Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by a huge series with the Atlanta Braves Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Milwaukee is 18-11 after the All-Star break. In second place and hanging tough are the Chicago Cubs at 72-53, currently 5 games behind the Brew Crew. 36-26 at home, 36-27 on the road. 645 runs scored and 545 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 100. There's only one other person that was in here. I didn't see another one until Florian Light Rager 6427 came in there. All right, the Brewers have won 2 straight and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Or rather, the Cubs lost 2 straight and they are 6-4 over their last 10. They have a 97.8% chance of making the playoffs. All right, the Cubs started the week in the nation's capital, taking 2 of 3 from the Washington Nationals with 20 runs scored and 19 runs allowed. Then they returned home and lost the series to the St. Louis Cardinals 2-1 and being outscored 19-11. That's a 3-3 record for the Cubs with 31 runs scored and 38 runs allowed. They'll host their crosstown rivals, the Chicago White Sox, at Wrigley Field for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then it's off to Seattle for a 3-game set with the Mariners, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Cubs are also 18-11 post-All-Star break. The aforementioned St. Louis Cardinals are in 3rd place at 63-61. They are 13.5 games behind the Brewers. 32-34 at home, 31-27 on the road. 548 runs scored and 541 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 7. They've won 2 straight and they are 7-3 over their last 10. St. Louis currently has an 8.6% chance of making the playoffs. So next up last week for the Cardinals, they went 2-1 against the Philadelphia Phillies at Busch Stadium with 14 runs scored and 7 runs allowed. Then they went up to Wrigley Field and beat the arch-rival Cubs 2-1 with 19 runs scored and 11 runs allowed. So that's a 4-2 record against 2 playoff contenders, where they scored 33 runs and allowed 18. The Cardinals have a 5-game series with the Reds in Cincinnati, Monday through Thursday, and that includes a day-night doubleheader on Monday. And then they'll have their return series with the Phillies up in Philadelphia Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. St. Louis is 13-16 after the All-Star break. In 4th place are the Pittsburgh Pirates at 61-65, 16.5 games behind Milwaukee. 32-31 at home, 29-34 on the road. 633 runs scored and 603 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 30. They won their last game and they are 4-6 over their last 10. The Pirates presently have a 3.6% chance of making the playoffs. Alright, they started the week losing 2 of 3 in Miami to the Marlins, but they did outscore Miami 15-11. Then they came home and made a statement, taking 2 of 3 from the Boston Red Sox, outscoring them 16-11. That's a 3-3 record for the Pirates with 31 runs scored and 22 runs allowed. Their homestand wraps up with 3 against the Detroit Tigers Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they're headed west to play the Dodgers in Los Angeles for 3 Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Pirates are 11-18 after the All-Star break. Sitting in last place are the Cincinnati Reds at 59-64, 17 games behind the Brewers. 30-33 at home, 29-31 on the road. 502 runs scored and 588 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -86. They've lost 2 straight games and they are 4-6 in their last 10. Cincinnati has a 0.2% chance of making the playoffs. That's harsh. Alright, last week the Reds went 2-1 in Chicago against the first place White Sox, but they were outscored in the series 17-14. Then they returned home to Great American Ballpark where they lost 2 of 3 to the Miami Marlins and being outscored 15-6. So the Reds finished the week 3-3 with 20 runs scored and 32 runs allowed. The Reds have a 5-game set at home against the St. Louis Cardinals Monday through Thursday, and that includes a day-night doubleheader on Monday. Then it's off to Phoenix where they play 3 with the Arizona Diamondbacks Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So a rare 8-game week for both the Cardinals and the Reds. Cincinnati is 16-12 post All-Star break. That brings us now to the National League West where the Los Angeles Dodgers are out in front at 74-51. 37-26 at home, 37-25 on the road. 616 runs scored and 480 runs allowed gives them a run differential of +136. That ties the Brewers for the best run differential in the majors. The Dodgers lost 2 straight and they are 5-5 over their last 10. They have greater than a 99.9% chance of making the playoffs. Alright, they started the week out great, sweeping the Kansas City Royals 3-0 with 15 runs scored and 11 runs allowed. Then they hosted the Milwaukee Brewers for a 4-game set. They went 1-3 and being outscored 16-10. So they finished the week 4-3 with 25 runs scored and 27 runs allowed. This week they're off to Denver for 3 with the Colorado Rockies Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then they'll be back home at Dodger Stadium for 3 games with the Pittsburgh Pirates Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Moving back into second place are the San Diego Padres at 67-58. They are 7 games behind the Dodgers. 37-26 at home, 30-32 on the road. 535 runs scored and 532 runs allowed gives them a run differential of +3. They won their last game and they are a major league best 8-2 over their last 10. The Padres now have a 57.3% chance of making the playoffs. And San Diego had themselves a week, sweeping the Milwaukee Brewers at Petco Park 3-0, scoring 18 runs and allowing 7. Then they go to Cleveland and take 2 of 3 from the struggling Guardians, with 13 runs scored and 11 runs allowed. End result is a 5-1 record for the San Diego Padres, with 31 runs scored and 18 runs allowed. This week, the Padres begin with a 3-game series against the Mets in New York Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they return home to host the Minnesota Twins Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in a 3-game series. San Diego is 19-10 after the All-Star break. The Arizona Diamondbacks are in third place with a record of 66-59, 8 games behind LA. 36-27 at home, 30-32 on the road. 567 runs scored and 549 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 18. They lost their last game and they are 5-5 in their last 10. Arizona currently has a 44.4% chance of making the playoffs. And the week started out poorly for the D-backs as they went 1-2 at home against the Colorado Rockies. They did outscore them 15-9, but they turned it around and took 2 of 3 from the Braves in Atlanta, scoring 15 runs and allowing 8. So the Snakes finished 3-3 with 30 runs scored and 17 runs allowed. This week, the Diamondbacks continue their East Coast trip in Boston with 3 against the Red Sox, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they're back home at Chase Field for 3 with the Cincinnati Reds Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Arizona is 17-12 after the All-Star break. Fourth place belongs to the San Francisco Giants at 51-73. 22.5 games behind the Dodgers, so there is no chance they win this division. 29-33 at home, 22-40 on the road, 509 runs scored and 576 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 67. They lost their last game and they are only 3-7 in their last 10. They have less than a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs. And this was your customary poor week for San Francisco, losing 2 out of 3 to both the Houston Astros and Colorado Rockies. San Francisco was outscored in the Astros series 9-8 and outscored in the Rockies series 19-16. Thus, a 2-4 week for the Giants, with 24 runs scored and 28 runs allowed. And they'll be out east all week long, beginning with 3 against the Guardians in Cleveland Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then it's off to Fenway Park for 3 with the Boston Red Sox Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. San Francisco is 10-18 after the All-Star break. And still sitting last in the West are the Colorado Rockies at 50-74. Presently 23.5 games behind LA. 27-32 at home, 23-42 on the road, 596 runs scored and 709 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 113. They won their last game and they are 5-5 in their last 10. Colorado also has less than a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs. And they did very well against division rivals last week, on the road no less, going 2-1 at Arizona, despite being outscored in that series 15-9. Then they went to Oracle Park and won 2 of 3 from the San Francisco Giants, outscoring them 19-16. That's a 4-2 record for the Rockies with 28. This week they'll be hosting the LA Dodgers for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then the Cleveland Guardians will come to Denver for 3, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Rockies are 11-15 after the All-Star break. Alright, we're going to wrap this up with a look at the playoff races through August 16th. On the American League side, the Tampa Bay Rays would be the number 1 seed presently at 74-49. Then you got the Chicago White Sox, leaders of the Central, as the number 2 seed at 65-58. And the Houston Astros, leaders of the West, as the number 3 seed currently at 63-62. Now the wild card picture is very tight. Outside of, say, the top two wild card spots, which are held by the New York Yankees at 69 and 55 as the number one wild card, and the Boston Red Sox as the number two wild card at 66 and 58. As of right now, the Baltimore Orioles, with a record of 61 and 63, would have that last wild card spot in the AL. Texas at 61 and 64 is only a half game out. Toronto at 61 and 65 and Detroit at 60 and 64 are both one game out. Minnesota and Cleveland at 60 and 65 are both 1.5 games out. And Seattle at 59 and 66 presently sit 2.5 games out. The bottom three teams in the American League pretty much have no shot at this point, as Kansas City is 10.5 out at 51 and 74. The Athletics are 49 and 75 and 12 games out. And the LA Angels at 49 and 76 are 12.5 games out. Now over to the National League. As of now, the Milwaukee Brewers, owners of baseball's best record and leaders of the NL Central, would be the number one seed at 77 and 48. The Atlanta Braves have moved back into the number two seed as leaders of the East at 74 and 50, which moves the Dodgers, the NL West leaders, down to the 3 spot at 74 and 51. The wild card race in the National League is also pretty tight. As of right now, your 3 wild card teams would be the Chicago Cubs at 72 and 53. They would be the number 1 wild card. And then you have both the Philadelphia Phillies and San Diego Padres at 67 and 58. Based on tiebreakers, Philadelphia would be the number 2 wild card, while San Diego is the 3rd and final wild card. Arizona at 66 and 59 is just 1 game out. Miami and St. Louis, both 64 and 61, are 3 games out. Pittsburgh, with a record of 61 and 65, are 6.5 games out. Washington at 60 and 66 and Cincinnati at 59 and 65 are both 7.5 games out. And then you'll have 3 wild shot or long shots in the National League as well. The New York Mets at 56 and 69 are 11 games out. The San Francisco Giants at 51 and 73 are currently 15.5 games out. And the Colorado Rockies at 50 and 74 would be 16.5 games out. As of August 16th. And that is a look at your weekly rundown of the Major League Baseball standings. I can't talk today. And the playoff races through August 16th. Alright, football content officially returns tomorrow. The preseason Associated Press college football poll was released at 12 noon Eastern today. And tomorrow I will be back to tell you all about that poll, plus the preseason coaches poll. That'll be coming out tomorrow. And then next week, we will have the Week 0 college football television schedule. That one's going to be brief since there's only about 8 games on the schedule. And then next Wednesday, I will be back with my season predictions for the NFL for 2026-2027. So a lot of football content headed your way in the next week or so and throughout the season, so make sure you stay tuned for all of it. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the baseball action this week. Peace out.